FYI, there's some things you need to know, and it's about crypto. Welcome to my first ever YouTube video on this channel, and the first of its kind for me, where I talk about crypto, DeFi, NFTs, gaming, and everything related to the blockchain. Since this is my very first video, my objective here is just to get some content out with a cell phone and some notes, and in future videos I plan to evolve the quality of my content with my cameras and lenses and things that I have on hand. For now, I hope you like the content, and if you bear with me, stick with me as I evolve the quality. I'll do my best to bring you useful information, and of course, please hit that subscribe button and like this video if you like the video. And feel free to comment with any questions or suggestions. If you have things that you'd like to see me cover, I'll be happy to do that and look into those topics. As I mentioned, everything relates to blockchain on this channel. If you're familiar with the term, most of you by now at least have heard something about the largest use case for a blockchain, which is Bitcoin. So what is Bitcoin? Well, I won't bore you with all the details, but I'll give you a quick summary with some technical information. So forgive that if it's a little too technical. But Bitcoin was designed as a currency on a digital ledger that records financial transactions within digital blocks in cyberspace. Each block contains what's called SHA-256 cryptographic hash and timestamp that's conveyed from the previous block. SHA is a secure hash algorithm originally designed by the NSA. And a cryptographic hash function is a mathematical algorithm that maps data as a one-way function. To put it simply, the blockchain is a ledger that contains encrypted data that can only be verified by the neighboring block within the blockchain. This makes the blockchain immutable and incredibly secure. You may have heard the term mining before, Bitcoin mining. So the purpose of Bitcoin mining, if you've heard that, is basically to provide computing processing power to the network. This processing power verifies transactions to compute the cryptographic data. It's the process of creating new Bitcoins, so also which are given to these miners as a reward for providing this processing power. So they're providing the power to the network to process the transactions, and then they're being given new Bitcoin that are being generated, and that's how they're paid or rewarded. However, the Bitcoin was created with what's called a halving function. And what that means, well, it means just that. It's a halving. Every time a certain number of blocks are mined, it's 210,000 to be exact, the rate of Bitcoin reward to those miners that I mentioned is cut in half by the algorithm, which equates to about every 4 years. This exact number of blocks would be mined. Now, this is the really interesting part. When these halving events are about to take place, the price of Bitcoin begins to react in a very bullish way. This is because the halving event increases the scarcity of the Bitcoin itself, since there's less supply coming onto the actual market, which makes sense. Imagine a country that had room for exactly 21 million houses. There'll only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, so I'll use this as an example. A country that had room for 21 million houses, and every 4 years the number of houses being built was cut in half. Until only one house remained from the builder. Now, those houses would have no choice but to increase in value due to the supply being reduced. At some point, very few people would remain that could afford an entire house. Eventually, the most you would be able to afford is a bedroom in a house, and eventually maybe a brick, especially as the population continued to grow and there was more need for houses. So this is similar to Bitcoin in that Bitcoin is fractional. So you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. A bunch of people can get together and buy a Bitcoin, but you don't even have to find those people. They're already on the network. You can purchase $100 of Bitcoin. You can purchase $10 of Bitcoin. Any amount in a fractional amount of Bitcoin you can purchase in the same way that investors could go on a property together. And this is important because there'll only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence, and there's not enough Bitcoin for everyone to own one, obviously. Some people get put off by this when they see the price of Bitcoin and they think about how expensive it looks. This is a little different to shares, like shares on the stock market, for example. When they go up in value, when Microsoft goes up to an astronomical figure, it gets to a very high price, they basically cut the shares in half, so they double the number of shares. Okay, and this gives you the impression that the shares are cheaper, when really it's because they've been cut in half and there's twice as many shares, and then twice as many again every time they do that. This doesn't happen with crypto. Each time when the price goes up, it continues to go up, and it doesn't get cut in half. However, the supply is getting cut in half in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies similar to that. So that's why you have such a big number on some of these coins, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's expensive. The market cap is what's really relevant, which is the total volume or total amount of money that's contained within the currency itself. So as Bitcoin absorbs monetary energy from financial systems of the world, it becomes increasingly scarce, along with that halving function that I mentioned. So this halving effect has continued without fail for the last 12 years since Bitcoin's inception. And given the speed of adoption and the mechanics within the design, 1 million or 10 million per Bitcoin is not unreasonable. Just within a couple cycles, potentially, which would be within 10 years. The best way to think about Bitcoin is as property. It's a store of value that you can equate with gold. So it's, in essence, digital gold, and this is oftentimes how it's referred to. While Bitcoin becomes scarcer, what's happening with fiat currency, the typical currency that we use every day or put in our bank account? Well, the Fed keeps printing more money. Those dollars you're holding are devalued every year as the government increases the amount of dollars in existence. This is called inflation. Most of you should know what inflation is. You know that when you were kids or when your parents were kids, the gas at the pump was pennies and now it's dollars. It's not because it's more expensive, it's because there's more dollars in existence, in circulation. So it takes more dollars to purchase something because each one of those dollars is worth less. So if you let your money just sit in the bank account, eventually it will lose 90% of its value just by maintaining the same amount of dollars. So fiat currency is increasing in supply while the Bitcoin supply is consistently reduced due to the halving. So it's becoming more scarce while fiat currency is doing the very opposite and becoming more abundant. So mega corporations, hedge funds, and smart money have done the math here, and they are all pouring into Bitcoin right now. You may hear about it in the news, you may not be paying attention, but it's happening. And some have called it the Great Wealth Transfer, where the earliest adopters will become the wealthiest. But even countries are starting to embrace this digital future. Take El Salvador, for example, who recently made Bitcoin an official currency of their country and provided digital wallets to all their citizens. And the interesting thing is that since they've done that, they haven't seen an outflow, people selling their Bitcoin. They've seen more people in El Salvador purchasing more Bitcoin going into those wallets, which is quite fascinating. So it would be interesting if we saw poor countries become rich during this process. I believe that over the next decade or two, we'll see potentially, at the rate that this is moving, we could see a dramatic change in the global financial structure and wealth disbursement among individuals and countries, governments, and corporations. So an interesting future could be ahead of us, indeed. Now, I'm not an advisor. I'm not a financial advisor. This is purely for education, entertainment. So I can't tell you if you should buy Bitcoin. That's your own personal decision. However, since we are in the middle of a bull cycle created by one of these halving events I mentioned, currently happening, when you look at the news and you see all the headlines of Bitcoin making new highs and doing these crazy things, that's because we've approached a halving event and it's basically running up because of that. But because of other cryptos running up and down and basically being pulled around by Bitcoin, other crypto with different use cases that have smaller market caps, there may be greater opportunities for investment in some of these because you're going to see greater percentage moves, basically. But this is just a foundation. The stuff that other stuff that's pretty exciting is Web 3.0, the future of the internet, and all the crazy applications that can be built on the blockchain. All gaming will be moving to the blockchain, virtually all gaming. If you've seen the movie Ready Player One, there's something similar to that, or the early stages of the metaverse being created, where a lot of things will be happening and transacting and interacting within these digital universes. It's all happening. But I won't get too much into that today, just a quick summary. I'll explain some of those risky opportunities in other videos, and I'll also introduce you to DeFi, or decentralized finance, which will empower you to be your own bank, to earn reasonably significant interest with little to no risk in some cases. And I'll introduce you to the world of NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, if crypto is eating the world's financial systems, then NFTs are what will eat crypto. Just FYI, stay tuned.